Hi, I'm Josh McDonald.
And I'm Random Materi, and we are Hand Therapy Academy.
Let's talk today about some patient dynamics. Specifically, like how long should you chase that patient who's just not coming in? The missing patient report that we fill out, and we get patients who haven't been in 2 weeks or maybe a week, and there's just a struggle to get them to show up to their appointments. How long do you work to chase them? So, Miranda, do you guys have like a clinic policy on that? Is it like patient by patient?
Yeah, we usually give them two calls, so we'll call them twice, and then we document it, and then we'll send a note to whoever sent the referral to us. With that being said, though, I always encourage the therapist who has a relationship with that patient to text or call them as well, and just check in and see how they're doing. But typically, after two, we say we're good, unless there's something that we're really worried about, or something's a little bit off. Um, then we'll spend a little bit more time at it. How about you guys? What do you do?
If they're just not coming in or they aren't rescheduling to come in, yeah, then we have like we'll call them two, maybe three times, um, as just like a general starting point policy. But it's really on a patient case by case basis. Like we have patients where it's a huge trauma or they really need to come in because of functional limitations. And so we'll maybe push a little bit harder with those. Sometimes it has to do with how busy we are as a clinic. If I've got my therapist sitting around doing nothing, I'll say, like, all right, go through patients that haven't been in a while and just reach out. Because if they come in once and then don't come in again, maybe they get a new home program update. But just you've got the time, why not reach out to those patients? So it may be based on us too a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it also depends. Like sometimes there's a lot of people we worry about, right? Like I remember being a therapist and be like, I haven't seen them in 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm genuinely worried. Like, are they okay? What happened? We haven't heard from them. So even if it's not, necessarily like, oh, I'm really worried about the rest. I'm worried about them as a person, right? I feel like sometimes we get to really know our patients, and you do start to worry.
Yeah. One of our clinics is in a high retirement area, lots of retirement communities. And so for us, it's this are they still doing okay? Right. Like we haven't seen Florence in a long time. It's been a couple of weeks. They're not returning calls. And we've had more than once where we called and a child, like one of their adult kids answered the phone and said, they're in the hospital. They've passed away. Like, so those things do happen. So it's good to, still kind of follow up out of concern for those patients for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We have a friend, a mutual friend of ours who works in a burn unit here in Phoenix, in the Maricopa County Burn Unit. And he said something, it was years ago, he said something to me and I like, that kind of resonates with me a little bit. And I hadn't really like put words to it. We had a patient he'd referred to us and I said, hey, just a heads up, this guy's not coming back. We've called, he's came once or twice and he's just not coming back. Well, the burn population kind of tends to do that. It's the nature of the person who's likely to get a burn injury may not also be making good life choices about coming in for therapy and keeping up with life things. And he's like, it's their hand. We can only chase them so much. It's their hand. They're making their choices. And I think he might have been a little jaded about his caseload in general, but I thought, you know what? Yeah, it is. Like I can't care more about your injury and your hand than you do. Like you've got to take ownership of that. And I had to kind of create that professional boundary for myself.
Yeah, it can be difficult, right? Especially when, as a therapist, you really invested a lot in that patient, right? And you invest your time thinking about them, thinking about what program you're going to do with them, how you're going to reach those goals with them, and if that's not their goal, it's not their goal, and you can't make that their goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't make it happen. I can't make them come in. And sometimes they can't come in. Like there's a fair number of patients. You've got a single mom working with two kids and life is crazy. And we think this is her biggest priority. She's got to pay the electric bill and get her kids to school and keep everybody fed. Like this may not be her number one priority. So maybe we need to flex around that person a little bit and say, all right, every other week is maybe all I'm going to get with you. And I'll put you on a same day visit notice when we have this where like you call us and at any time you call, we'll find a place to put you because we know it's all we're going to get. So for some of those patients, we work around them a little bit more if it's just their limitation.
Yeah. And then another thing I would encourage, if you have a patient that's not showing up, or maybe they're not seeing the value in the services we're providing, right? So I think that's another thing to be aware of. Am I being a good therapist? Am I providing value, or is this something they could do at home, right? So, and if it's something they can do at home, I think we need to make sure we're still checking in with them, we're updating their home program, and we're adding new things for them, as opposed to just saying, oh, they're non-compliant. It just could be that they're not seeing value in the services, or maybe there's a lack of understanding of why they need to come in. And as a therapist, have we done a good job providing the rationale for why they're coming in and what we're doing? And
Yeah.
what are the long-term implications of not coming? What have we seen? What is our experience?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's about patient education and our therapists. I don't want to say selling our services. That sounds kind of like used car salesman, but being an advocate for like, hey, there's a value to this. And if you think you can do it on your home, then I'm not doing a good job saying like, here's how I would progress you. Here's the manual stuff that you just can't do for yourself sometimes. And so you're right, making them aware of, hey, going in is a value in and of itself. Yeah.
Right. And then if it's not, if they really can do it at home, then making sure that you're giving them a good program for home and checking in with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I was telling Miranda we had a case just the other day where the patient had been coming to us for a while with a distal radius fracture, was very, very stiff, and did not really understand how much to push herself at home with home program. So she was doing her home program, but not really getting the value out of it, but coming in very consistently. And then she just fell off and stopped coming in. I reached out to her. And she said, the therapist that I went in and spoke to the last two times told me in a very negative way I was not going to get any range of motion back. Well, I know the staff, and I know there's absolutely no way they told her that because she had been seeing some changes lately. She had been very, very stiff and was starting to see some functional progressions and strength progressions, even if not directly range of motion. And she said her PA, who had been an absolute jerk the whole time and refused to write scripts for us and told us we just needed to make her hurt more and push her more aggressively, was suddenly saying, well, maybe you are making great changes. Maybe you could just do it at home all by yourself. So come back in 6 weeks and we'll see if that's sufficient. And so now this patient thinks she heard something and her brain turned it into a negative, like they're telling me I'm not going to change, when we had been so ultimately positive with this person just because she was just kind of that person that needed a positive voice. We can't do anything about it. If she doesn't want to come in and she heard something, so we say, I'm sorry that's what you heard, but if you need anything else, you let us know and we're just here for you when you need it. There's just nothing you can do.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point that you bring up about how the patient heard something different than what the therapist probably was saying. And I was reading a book about communications, and they were saying that actually happens a high percentage of the time in any everyday communication, you and I communicating, us communicating with the patients. So I think it's really um, interesting. Like they may understand 80% or 20% of what we said and misunderstand 80%. The statistics are kind of staggering and it's interesting. But then checking in with the patient and seeing, did they hear what I'm actually saying and did they understand it, right? So having that patient be able to have the opportunity to convey back to you, I think is really important.
That's a great point. Yeah. And the three of us had all had essentially the same conversation. The patient comes in, how am I doing? How's my range of motion? Can we take measurements? And we say like, you're doing great. We're not seeing as much changes as maybe we'd like, and we may not get to full range, but you're doing great. We try to do that like the correction sandwich, right? Where you do
Yeah.
a positive, and maybe the negative in the middle, but it's surrounded by positives. And she heard something different. And I don't know if that stewed in her brain after she left and it turned into something negative. I know the therapist didn't tell you not going to see any range of motion because that's not the way we function in our clinic. We would never say that. And that's not how this patient was progressing, but that's what she heard. And we talked about, well, maybe you misheard her. Nope, that's exactly what she said. Okay. There's no winning that argument and saying, nah, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. But just saying, like, we're here for us if you need us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're right. I'm sorry that that was that experience that you had, right? Because it's ultimately what she heard, right, in her mind.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
matter how, we'll be like, gosh, that's just crazy that she thinks that, right? But that
Yeah.
is really what she is thinking.
Yeah. And that's how good clinics end up sometimes with bad press, bad Google reviews, whatever it is, because someone heard something that wasn't said and that can explode into something. And so I'm always hesitant when a patient comes in and says, "Oh, I had a bad experience over here." I tell my staff, "Be careful." Because that may be just based on perception, or it may be that you're going to be the next one that's bad mouth the next time around. Perception is so much of reality for a lot of
Yeah,
our
it
patients.
definitely is. And I think that was part of motivational interviewing too, is asking, well, even if they did have a bad experience at that other clinic, well, what was bad about it or what did you not like about it? Because then you can make those adjustments in your own treatment, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
and then like, okay, I know that that was a bad experience for them, so we can change or adapt what we're doing slightly and to offer a better service for them.
And sometimes it's about listening to what the undertones of what they're saying are. If they say, oh, they never gave me enough individual time, they were always so crazy busy that they couldn't. Okay, well, then if we're going to help this patient and keep them coming and engaged in therapy, then I need to maybe schedule it a less busy time or not double book myself, or kind of listening to some of those subtle things to say, like, how are we going to keep this patient coming so that they can get better?
And then ask that question later, like, hey, do you feel like you're getting enough personalized time? Do you feel like I'm working? Like you can definitely ask those things. And I feel like when you ask them and they say, yes, I'm getting enough personalized times, then they're not going to be upset, right? Because they've said it out loud.
Yes, yes.
You
And
know?
at the same, yeah, and at the same point, we can't totally cater to that. Sometimes those patients want something that is unrealistic. I had a patient say, "I'm only going to come here if you see me privately in a private treatment room with no one else around, and I have your dedicated time." I'm like, "I have a busy clinic. I'm sorry, I just don't think I'm the right place for you." Like, we can't meet everyone else's needs, whether it's getting them to come in all the time or their quirks and preferences. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
We try. I think we've had those patients where we try really hard to meet those expectations. But I think if you're fair and you set them up early, like we had a patient that didn't want to come in when anybody else was in the clinic because she was afraid of germs and things like that. So we always had them in the morning and then we'd get them out by a certain time. But there became a point in time where the patient kept asking for more and more. And you're like, no, we did that for you and we're happy to continue to do that, but we can't add more stuff in.
yeah, yeah. Professional boundaries need to go both ways. And you need to be able to say, like, yeah, I want you to come in and get value out of the service. But at some point, we've got to draw a line because we have to run a practice and serve other patients and keep our own sanity too.
Yeah, like if someone's walking in the door, that we didn't expect, then that's that can happen, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
you
Walkovers, even someone early. Yeah,
can't get upset with us when those are variables we can't control.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, dealing with patients is a whole bag of confusion and drama sometimes, but hopefully this is helpful for you guys. If you have any thoughts or input, or if you have any questions, you can reach us on our social media platforms, Hand Therapy Academy, or you can email us info@handtherapyacademy.com.